Thank you. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you so much. I started my comedy career 50 years ago. I was 18, and I was working as a hall monitor in a Hebrew school. So to tame the natives, I would tell them jokes and riddles and funny stories until the bell rang. But unfortunately, I took a 50-year hiatus in order to raise kids, get cancer, divorce the professor, ordain as a rabbi, foster a special needs child, move to a commune, become a grandma, and start a chicken cooperative, and retire. And my dad owned a gay bar and a strip club for my entire childhood, and he was in the mafia. So as we say in the comedy business, I have material. I was a rebellious young teenager in the late 60s and the 70s out in Minneapolis, and my dad owned a strip club and a gay bar. So I was very popular. And I dated heavily. That's what we called it back then. I also managed to attract a number of bi-curious or closeted men who could meet me and try out for both teams. I could see how it went with a nice Jewish female, and then if that didn't work out, we could go down to my dad's bar and drink and try out for the other team. So I'll tell you a little bit about my dad's club. It was quite an amazing place. It's actually a restaurant and a bar under one liquor license. The gay 90s was the straight part. That was the hetero part. And it was a kind of a bar right on the strip in Minneapolis where businessmen from out of town would go in to get a steak and a martini for lunch. And if they wanted to come back after the conference was over, they could watch the floor show and drink again and maybe meet a young lady who would be very, very happy to spend a little time with him. And there was a special room in my dad's bar for spending time with a nice young lady. On the other side was an intimate little gay bar, just a little strip. And the bathrooms were shared, so you could never tell what was going on, because in the beginning there was actually a stage show with strippers and some female impersonators and musicians, some good musicians. So this side was, the restaurant side was red velvet and mahogany bar and tables, a kitchen in the back, and the kind of a place where a mafia guy would walk in and say, "Oh, Al, wouldn't it be a shame if this burned down? Al, you wouldn't mind holding this package for me? My friend Tony just got out, and he'll be stopping by for it." Sure, I'll give it to Cal Taylor. I'll give it to the doorman, and so on. Tony quickly became my Uncle Tony. Cal became my Uncle Cal. When your dad's in the mafia, you have more aunts and uncles than you're related to be honest. Anyways, so it was a very fun place for me to hang out. And in the early 70s, they fired the strippers, they fired the band, and they put in a gay disco. They had a DJ up there, and they put a dance floor in here. So these young men that I would take with me downtown to the bar was really my first time being in the helping professions, helping these young men figure out what team they wanted to play on. And that's how I got started in my career with social work and rabbinics and all that. 3 of the guys I dated, out of the 3 of them, 2 went gay and 1 went Orthodox. And that's still how it is for me, that for every 2 gay friends I have 1 Orthodox friend. So that's been kind of my ratio. Now, one of the men I helped in this way was Barry H. I want to describe him to you. Tall, lithe, handsome, blue eyes, such a tease, little mustache, black curls. Oh, Barry H. The good ones get away. So he asked me if I would help him decide. And me being a very dear friend, I would do anything for Barry, so I did the deed with Barry. And it didn't go well. He was repulsed, might be too strong of a word, by the unfamiliar sights and sounds, odors. It was so different than what he was used to. And so we went downtown. But now that he had decided he had to leave town, because his mother, Mrs. H., Shirley H., was a stereotype come to life. She would stand like this with a spatula in her hand and go, "Why doesn't Barry ever bring home any nice women?" Just like this. And so he went to L.A. the minute that he could finish high school and get out of there, where he became my very first friend to appear on national television. He was on The Gong Show. And he had started his career as a singing, dancing telegram messenger. And he was gonged. But it was still good for business. So he was in very great shape. I was in college. I was still taking dance and movement classes at that time. When he came home, we went downtown and immediately hit the club, went dancing. So we start, disco ball, gay couples all over the place, me and Barry kind of doing a thing. And he starts like going, right? And a little bit of lean and then lean, And so he starts kind of giving me signals and I'm following him. And this is pretty fun and we're getting into it. And it's really building up. We're taking up space. He's swinging me around. I'm swinging back and I'm going, that's so weird. We're not bumping into anybody, but it seems like we're taking up a lot of room. But the reason that was happening is because all the men were standing around in a circle and clapping and time to the music as Barry and I finished the whole dance with me somehow schlepped over his knee like Ginger Rogers. And that was the last moment of it. And people went wild. They went wild. And all the other clients ran up to me and they said, "Oh, Andrea, introduce me to that dreamy man." Oh, Lord. We lost Barry H. to AIDS. And Mrs. H. came to his aid and accepted his sexuality. The minute that happened, she flew out to Los Angeles and fed him love and chicken soup until he passed away. She comforted herself by telling her friends that he had died of cancer and by telling herself that all of her other kids turned out regular. It was still really one of the high points of my life to be just in the moment, swinging and dancing like that. So much intuition and love and joy passing between us. And it occurred to me that it's ironic, but that the safest place for a frisky teenager in Minneapolis is in her dad's gay bar on the arms of a beautiful man. Okay, Andrea CK, that is not my birth name. My birth name is Abraham Solomon. So I've been a disappointment to my parents from the very first minute. But they lit upon Andrea Sue after a while. Kohen, as you may or may not know, is like priestly. It's like an elevated position in the Jewish community, kind of royalty. But we think it was stolen valor. We think it was actually Bernstein. And my parents were taking advantage of Ellis Island to kind of make the leap into a higher class of Jewish people. So there I am, Andrea Kohen. Now that means in Hebrew, if you take it apart, Andrea, andros, human. It means female human priest. Okay, I'll take it, After a while, I got married, and I married a guy whose last name was Keiner. Keiner is German for nothing, not, which is pretty much what I got out of the union, except for 4 wonderful children. So now I have the name Andrea Cohen Keiner, human female, priest of nothing, right? Now, if you're a traditional Jew and you are not into the idea of women rabbis, that is a very clever insult. She thinks she's the priest of nothing, But in Buddhism, gigantic compliment, bragging, priest of nothing. How could we be in touch with nothing, the master and the mistress of nothing? So I'm going with that version. All right, how do we get to Andrea CK? Oh, yeah. Do you guys know Louis CK? Well, to be honest, it's a little bit an homage of Louis CK. Because when I first started after my 50-year hiatus from comedy, when I first started up in comedy, he was very popular. I admired him. Little Louis had not been exposed yet. Now, some of you are going to get that joke, and some of you aren't. But apparently he had a little problem with self-satisfying in certain settings. We're going to go back over that just a little bit. But little Louis hadn't been exposed when I took on that name. Just circling back to that. Yeah, Louis CK, he is amazing. Now, he got the CK from the unpronounceable Polish last name that he has. But I got it through Kohn-Kiner, so I took it. I just kept it and ran with it. I kind of liked it. But the thing about Louis CK, I decided to boycott him a little bit because, like, after a show, some of the other comedians would, go with him. You want to come into the back room with me? And he asked for permission to have a little moment with himself. And I was very judgmental about that, but I've decided to forgive him because if I was in a situation where 4,000 people were chanting, Andrea CK, brava, brava, I might need to go to a room somewhere and climax my joy. I haven't had that experience, so I cannot judge him. And he did ask for permission. And I will say he has balls because we've seen him in most of his movies and specials. You just have to know what you're getting into when you open yourself to Louis CK. And keep the lights low, I would think. I did decide to forgive him, though. I should make this disclaimer right at this point that the material today, it's not going to be PG exactly, parental guidance. It's going to be PB, which is like post-bar mitzvah. So I don't know if you know this or not, but in comedy, talking dirty, being explicit about sex is called working blue. And, if I talk about my life, how am I going to do that without talking blue? I mean, there were hookers in my reception line at my bat mitzvah. How am I going to tell you these things? But as a rabbi, on the other hand, I have to watch it because I never know what I'm up against here. And so I have to work light blue. You're going to hear light blue material tonight. Everyone good? We're good with that? I finally recently figured out how to dress properly. And I was challenged in that as a child because all my role models for beauty were female impersonators and prostitutes. And I guess my mom a little bit, and that was the Beehive era. So I rejected that as quick as I could get out of that. But I just really didn't know how to dress. So my first kind of outfit was like the hippie uniform in my age that was low-cut jeans, bell-bottoms, and a halter top, like the most boob showing as possible. So I did that for a while. Then I went through the Orthodox phase where it was don't let my sexy elbows or knees stick out, you guys. People might have an errant thought about that. But also being from Minnesota, I'm really, really intent about dressing for the weather because Minnesota has a kind of weather where the snot can freeze on your nose as it's coming out. And your tears, which are trying their best to keep your eyeballs from freezing over, they just freeze on your eyelashes. And people walk around in parkas, big green parkas with fur hood faces on there, pretty much looking like a walking igloo that's wearing a parka. And this is mostly so as not to freeze to death in the morning snow. And I will tell you that you are much more likely to freeze to death in stilettos than in a parka and very ugly boots. What does it matter what you're wearing underneath? So I have this also practical thing. You got to dress for where you're going to be. I think there was a period where I was a little depressed because one of my employers, my first employer that tried to help me with fashion, they sent me over a color consultant. And the color consultant said, there's really not a lot of variety of colors in your wardrobe. And I said, well, there's a lot of black. She said, uh-huh. And I said, gray's a color. And eventually, under her tutelage, I reached out to steel blue. I was still a little depressed, probably. That was during a period of my life where I call most of my marriage and then some. So coming back into line with color, that happened with my next employer who invested in my fashion development, and they took me shopping. And I can still see her now running up to me with gold tops and purple tops. And, so I started to figure it out, but I still really get a little triggered by, I couldn't do eye makeup. I can't do that kind of stuff because it reminds me of my errant childhood. Really tough stuff. So I took a rabbi job in a farming area, but right now all that I have are, basically T-shirts from every nonprofit that I ever volunteered for, and long rayon skirts with elastic bands, and that's a few other items here and there. I moved up here to be the rabbi up here, and it was still the expectation that you show up somewhat decent for services and stuff like that. So I continue to get feedback about fashion until the very last performance review of my career, which I finally got acceptable, which was a real triumph. And I've just continued to soar after that point. And I, in fact, recently I got 3 compliments. I have gotten 3 compliments. Someone said to me in the co-op, they said to me, I love your mud boots. Where did you get them? And that's a little more dressing for the weather thing because I just come from the chicken coop. But still, I was that lady's fashion icon. Another woman that I know from my congregation said, you look comfortable but professional. Psh, I would say that's acceptable plus. Yeah? And recently, this is the best. I'm bragging about this one. I was out in LA with my kids, and they have a gay friend, Adam. And Adam said to me, you are retroactively monochromatic. And to be honest with you, I took it as a gigantic compliment, of course, but because that's how he meant it. But that was actually my baseline. I always thought that when you get dressed, that should be your baseline. You should have the color scheme should be an acceptable match. They should be clean, and there should be no visible holes. So I was really acing every category, but I guess it's kind of in right now. I had the idea of tree going on. I had green and green, different kind of greens going on, and he said that was very hip of me. This is not related to clothes, but it's I found a new body part to be ashamed about. It used to be my polkies. Do you know what polkies are? Oh, polkies. That's what. You're so big. It's yelling at my polkies. But then I had this noticing that when you're with a little baby, there's the polkies, you're squishing up their little thighs, their little baby thighs. So I kind of, I said, I'm going to love my thighs. I'll love my thighs. But no, I look in a mirror and there's who's this? Whose additional arm is this, And I'm kind of the age right now that if I'm on a Zoom call or something, I have to decide where to place the camera because it's a choice between my receding hairline or my vagina neck kind of sticking out. And you have to go, I'm kind of off camera some of the time, and it works a little better. But so I do have some fashion tips for older ladies, which I'll share because I have gotten better at this. Okay, so what helps on the Zoom calls is a beret and a neck, a beautiful ascot, a scarf. And you're good. Center it, right? I recommend elastic. And for me, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. I try to pick shirts and tops that match the color of my dandruff. So it can be like a pasty gray, kind of putty sort of color, and you can usually get later into the day before it's noticeable. You know, my dad, Big Al, he was scary to me. He's a big, big man. At the end of his life, well, at the end, right before his stomach surgery, he weighed close to 500 pounds. Since he was that unusual looking, he was, of course, the type of person that would wear Hawaiian prints top and then Hawaiian print shorts that really clashed with his varicose veins. He was not a shy or retiring person. He was a very out there person. And he knew all these guys that had been arrested for one kind of crime and another, and he was in on that a little bit himself. I don't think he ever killed anybody, but I think he helped people get off. He did a lot of mitzvahs too. He did a lot of good deeds. He was a very kind-hearted person, but he had a room full of skeletons, I do believe. And when he passed away, my sister, who lives in the state of mind called California, all of her friends are psychics and past life regressors or dream interpreters, one or the other. And so my sister Sid was with her friend, and her friend said, "Oh, Big Al is here. He wants to talk to you." And she said, because we lived with him all of our lives and we all ran away from home at the appropriate time, she said, "Tell him he's dead. He should go to the light." And on a subsequent visit, he said he was afraid. And that went on for quite a long time, that he would show up and try to tap on her shoulders. I think he didn't come to me because at a certain point he decided that I was too sensitive to hang around at the bar. So, I became like the religious one. So my sister Sid was a little more wild, and so he thought that would be an easier door to come in through. And after probably about 10 years, everyone in the family, we all felt, oh, I feel like Dad's in a little better place right now. And then shortly after that, my sister had another knock on the door from Dad through her friend, and he said, "We can see heaven from where we are, but we can't get in because we're not remorseful." He said, "I'm with Uncle Dick," that was his partner in business and in crime, "but we can't get in because we loved the women, the sex, the money, the power. Everything about it gave him a sense of power." So, and then, a number of years later, like years, we're talking about another decade because he's gone quite a long time, we got a message from him, and he said, "I'm in school now, and it's very beautiful." And my sister asked him through the friend, "Are you still with Uncle Dick?" And he said, "That isn't how it is here. Here, we all have to do our own work." Isn't that really beautiful? I want to go back and tell you a little bit of a story about my mom before we go back to the last revelation from Dad, okay? People often ask me where my mom was in all of my dad's escapades and criminal activity and my childhood. And I actually always answered that question by going, "My mom thought everything was fine." And then I found a picture of her at my wedding while the contract was being signed, like this. That really was one of her coping strategies, besides Percocet. So, again, after Dad died, we all knew that he had a steady girlfriend. His girlfriend was younger than my younger sister. She was really quite young, Sandy. And if you were with my dad before 10 p.m. at night, he was with Phyllis. He was with my mom. If you were with Dad after 10 p.m. at night, and his work days went to 4 in the morning sometimes at the bar. He was with Sandy. Everyone knew. Everyone knew so much that my sister just off the cuff mentioned that she couldn't believe that Sandy had the nerve to come to Dad's funeral after their long-standing affair of all those years. And my mother said, "What?" And she reiterated the situation, and my mom said, "I wish he was alive so I could kill him." Which really helped her in her grief recovery. So the very, very last time, unless there's been another one since, and this is because 1 month after my dad got into heaven school, my mom died. And at her funeral, I said, she's going to the head of her class. She's going straight to the front row of heaven school, because that's how she was. She was really a good woman. And the next time my sister saw him, Dad was wrapped around her from behind, giving her those cuddles she wanted all those years, and weeping wordlessly, weeping and holding this good woman. Well, that's a happy ending. Yeah, so that's Big Al and the afterlife. Now, how do I know this is all real? That what my sister is saying is real? Because one of the conversations she had with Dad, he came to her one time after his big revelation and said, he apologized. He apologized to her for something that was in her life path with him, not my business. And he apologized very sincerely. And my sister said something like, "But what about the other crap? What about Andy?" And he said, "Well, at least she's getting a comedy show out of it." When you're facing death, you're supposed to say the Shema. There's a certain prayer that you're supposed to say. But how do we talk about this in comedy? You come on and you either die on stage or you kill. So either way, at a comedy show, I think you should end a little early and give everyone a chance to say the Shema. Thank you. I'm Andrea CK. Tip your waiter. Thank you.